Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're talking about the economics of blockchain security. We're going to get into what it actually costs to take down a massive network like Bitcoin or Ethereum. And spoiler alert, this isn't some Hollywood movie hack. It's a high-stakes game of pure economic warfare.
Okay, so let's just dive right into the big question. How much would it really cost to destroy Bitcoin? Now, the answer to this isn't some hidden bug in the code or a secret backdoor. Nope, it's a number. A really, really big number, with a dollar sign in front of it. You see, the whole idea behind blockchain security isn't about building a wall that's impossible to climb, but about making the cost of climbing that wall so insanely high that it's just a terrible financial decision for anyone to even try.
And that brings us to this core idea for today, attack cost modeling. You can think of it as the science of figuring out that exact price tag for destruction. The goal isn't to make an attack impossible. It's to make it a guaranteed way to lose an absolute fortune.
So it all boils down to this one simple, really elegant formula. As long as the cost of corruption is greater than the profit from corruption, the network is basically safe. Think about it this way. Imagine it cost you $1 million in heavy equipment to break into a bank vault. But you know for a fact there's only $100,000 inside. Would you do it? Of course not. You'd lose your shirt. Blockchains are designed around that very same economic principle.
So how do these networks actually build up these economic defenses? Well, there are two main ways of thinking about it. You can think of it as building a fortress out of pure, raw energy versus building a fortress out of pure money.
And this is where it gets really interesting. On one side, you've got proof of work, which is what powers Bitcoin. To play the game, you have to spend real-world resources, a ton of electricity, and these super powerful specialized computers. It's a very physical, very real defense. But on the other side, you've got proof of stake, which is what Ethereum uses. And here, the defense is purely financial. To participate, you have to buy and lock up a huge amount of the network's own coin as collateral.
And this slide right here shows the killer feature of proof of stake. See, if you attack a proof of work network, yeah, you waste a ton of money on electricity, but you still own all your expensive computers. You could, in theory, try again later. But with proof of stake, there's this incredible mechanism called slashing. If the network catches you trying to cheat, the code itself automatically destroys your locked up money. It's not a fine, it's not a penalty, it is financial annihilation, carried out by the protocol. It's a seriously powerful deterrent.
And just to give you some scale here, that's the size of Ethereum's capital wall as of mid-2024, $111 billion. I mean, that's more than the entire value of huge companies like Starbucks or Boeing. An attacker would have to get their hands on tens of billions of dollars of that capital, all while knowing that the network has a built-in kill switch that can just, delete their entire investment if they get caught.
So, okay, the main walls of the big networks like Bitcoin and Ethereum are just incredibly high. But attackers are smart, and so the game had to evolve. The new question became, what if you don't have to build your own army from scratch? What if you could just rent one for an hour?
And this is where marketplaces like NiceHash came onto the scene. They basically let anyone rent enormous amounts of computing power, or hash rate, on a really short-term basis. For all the smaller proof-of-work cryptocurrencies out there, this was a total game changer. All of a sudden, an attacker didn't need millions of dollars in hardware to get started. They just needed a credit card and a free afternoon. And this number is the terrifying result. The website Crypto51 keeps track of these costs, and for some of these smaller networks, it costs less than $1,000 to rent enough power to attack them for a whole hour. And this isn't just theory. This exact vulnerability led to a whole string of successful, really damaging attacks a few years back. This also brought a whole new, kind of sinister motive into the picture. What if the goal isn't to steal money directly from the blockchain? A Goldfinger attacker, named after the Bond villain, attacks a network just to cause chaos and panic. Why? Because as the price crashes, they're making a fortune from a huge bet against the token on some outside exchange. And we've actually seen this play out in the real world, like with Ethereum Classic, which suffered attacks where the profit almost certainly came from shorting the token's price, not from the hack itself.
All right, so let's see how this all builds. As the main security of these networks got stronger and stronger, the attackers dispivoted. They stopped trying to knock down the front gate of the castle and started looking for ways to corrupt the castle's government from the inside. The new bullseye was the governance system.
The curve wars were a perfect case study for this. So to put it simply, imagine a huge protocol called Curve that gives out all these valuable rewards. Well, other projects wanted those rewards for their own users. But instead of spending millions and millions buying up Curve's voting tokens to get their way, they found a much cheaper path.
Just pay the people who already own the tokens to vote for them. It literally became an open market for renting votes.
And the efficiency was just stunning. Data from platforms that popped up to handle all this showed that for every single dollar an entity spent on bribes, they could steer over $4 worth of those valuable rewards. And this wasn't some secret hack going on in the dark. It was a totally open and hugely profitable attack on the democratic process of the protocol itself.
And this whole bribery market leads to a really chilling idea, the dark DAO. This is a theoretical smart contract that basically automates a hostile takeover. An attacker could launch a contract that publicly offers, say, $5 to anyone who votes for a malicious proposal. The results could be catastrophic. I'm talking about a proposal that votes to drain the entire treasury to the attacker's wallet. It's a way to steal millions by weaponizing our own greed and apathy.
Okay, so what happens if all the economic defenses totally fail? The walls are breached, the governance has been captured. Is it just game over? Well, no. There is one last incredibly powerful line of defense. That final defense is us. It's the human layer. It's called social consensus. If an attack is so bad, so severe, that it just violates the entire spirit of the network, the community, the users, the developers, everyone can simply agree to reject it. They can coordinate and decide on a new version of the truth, and in doing so, effectively erase the attack from history. This is exactly what happened to reverse that massive DAO hack on Ethereum way back in 2016.
And this quote from Vitalik Buterin just captures the power of this final backstop perfectly. In a proof-of-work system, you can't just magically make an attacker's physical computer hardware disappear. But in a proof-of-stake system, the community can push out a software update, that's a hard fork, that simply deletes the attacker's money from the valid version of the chain. The attacker is left holding the keys to a worthless, abandoned network, and their entire investment is just gone.
And looking at this timeline, you can really see the whole journey we've been on. Blockchain security isn't some solved problem. It's a constant arms race, a cat-and-mouse game. We went from just counting raw computing power to modeling these rental markets and complex financial attacks to now dealing with brand new ideas like restaking, which is basically using the same capital to secure multiple networks at once. It's super efficient, but it also creates all these new layers of interconnected risk that we're really just starting to wrap our heads around.
So what's the big takeaway here? The battle for blockchain security is a dynamic economic war. It's not a static computer science problem. The goal is never, ever to make an attack impossible, but to constantly adapt to make sure it stays unprofitable. And as these systems get more and more complex, the next wave of attacks won't be from a sledgehammer, they'll be subtle exploits of that very complexity. Which leads to a really interesting question, right? What happens when it's not just humans, but super intelligent AI agents hunting for that next billion-dollar loophole?